Good morning, church. It is good to be with you here today. And today we are reminded in Deuteronomy 25, 6, and 7 again about how seriously God is taking the faithfulness of his people. All of what we're reading about here today is what they need to do when they get into the land to remind themselves first of God's provision, of what he wants, sharing food with the Levite and those who wouldn't have the means to support themselves, setting up systems of remembrance, the plastered stone on Mount Ebal, where interestingly, that's the one the curses come from. And I wondered about that today a little bit. Why is the written record of the law on the mountain where the curse came from? And perhaps we can draw that forward. And as Paul reminds us in Galatians, we've been reading through, it should be fresh in our minds that the law imprisoned and led to death. It doesn't mean it wasn't good. It was God's good law, but we couldn't keep the standard. We couldn't measure up or keep all that it was requiring. And so it did effectively become a curse. And so this could be seen as a forward-looking reality. And indeed, to the Israelites, the law would become a curse because they couldn't keep it. And the curses we're going to read about tomorrow would come upon them. And so the question that I think is good for us to pose is, what are the reminders that we should set up in our life so that we remember the goodness of God? We remember we're told, or the Israelites were told, to talk about the law when you get up, when you lay down, when you go out, when you're walking on the street. Talk about them on your children, write them on your door frames, bind them on your head, and whatever it takes for you to remember, to talk about, to digest. We should do no less. Our law, the law of Christ, isn't as complicated, but just because it's simpler doesn't mean it's easier. We need to be talking about the love of our God, how we love him, how that compels us to love others. We need to teach our children. When we get into the book of Judges, it's going to have the saddest line at the start of it. Joshua and all the elders will have passed away, and there arose a generation right after them who did not know God. They didn't teach them. And there's only one way to educate, is to talk about, to live it out, so that our words and our actions match up, so that the next generation can know and we can bring more people along with us. And we need to stand firm on Christ alone, that he is the only way, and that through his love and his redemptive sacrifice, we receive salvation. And we don't have to go back to this law that was set up on the mountain of curses. We run forward and we run to the strong tower of Jesus and his law of love. And this is how strongly Paul thinks about this. He says, I wish that those who were still hassling you would just go ahead and mutilate themselves. He says, they compel you to be circumcised. I wish they would just cut it all off. And it's frightening. It's very an outburst of anger from Paul, but it shows how serious he is about this matter. Don't let anybody add an additional burden to your faith beyond that which God himself laid down. God's burden is that we are to go and love our neighbor as we love ourselves. That on this, the entire law is fulfilled. If we just go and love others, empowered by the love that God first gave to us, because the fruit of the Spirit is love. I've read some theories that there is just one fruit, because that's singular. The fruit is love, and then those expressions of love that follow. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. All 9 of these that we read here today can be expressions of what the fruit is. But note that the first is love. And 1 Corinthians 13, faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. Paul just can't hammer this thing loud enough. He can't ring this bell loud enough. And the differentiation between the fruit of the flesh and the fruit of the Spirit, so stark, it's just so wonderful that we have been blessed to live a life of love and joy that we have. And so, church, if there's anything that is hindering your walk, or you read the fruit of the Spirit and you say, boy, I just don't see those in my life, let me know. And so we're here to talk about these things and to help each other to bear one another's burdens. Praying for you today, church. Sure love you lots, and we'll talk to you soon again.